양제 전부 존다 님이 장동는 몸 전부는 감기였다. 바크라 다른 감산도 싫마. 돈바 특제 장라기 점자로 이제로 정리 정금서 저거 뒤집신로 예란. 지금 번조자라 소란데 공교 도반 포로 신기로 우산산.
The surpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma's difficulty encountering beliefs of aeons. I now see it, here, receive it, and uphold it, about to fathom it, its true meaning, to liberate all beings, let's generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let us continue with our class on the wish-fulfilling treasury. As you may already know, that this particular text is a very well-known text within the Tibetan Buddhism. The author is the omniscient Longchen Rabjam that lived about 600 years ago. He's so well known, every family on the Tibetan plateau knows him. He's the equivalent of the Chinese master, the sixth patriarch. This particular text is so well known in the Tibetan language, but the Chinese translation, I actually started this translation back in the early 2000s, but later I didn't really get time to proofread it and to put it into the actual book. Back in 2020, initially I had plans to give teachings abroad to a few different schools, but then on one hand there's the pandemic, and then there's other reasons on top of it, and my health wasn't that great. So I had some space and time to retranslate and re-proofreading it and editing it. I think when a door is closed for one thing, maybe a window is opened for another thing. This is my personal experience. When such things happen, don't force things to work out. It is just like when you are stopped in a traffic jam. Complaining doesn't work. What's the point of whining at that time? It is better to use that time of being in the traffic jam, either read or either to do some other things that's really meaningful. You could always walk on another path when one path is blocked, to adjust your mindset and happily accept another way out. So today let's continue with this particular teaching. There are 22 chapters in total of this text, and we haven't even covered about half of it. We've finished about 30 or so classes. 20 something. So later we will probably use over 100 classes to finish teaching the wish-fulfilling treasury. In the evening, currently, we are studying wish-fulfilling treasury, which takes about 1 hour or so, and then later we will have a short class on the wish-fulfilling. Our wish-fulfilling guru, Pongtso Rinpoche, is teaching the extraordinary teachings from Pongtso Rinpoche, usually about 10 to 20 minutes. Our daily evening class would take about an hour and a half, or at least at most an hour and a half, not exceeding that. This is our current curriculum. Previously, in this class, we have already covered the formation of the animate and inanimate world, and then the degradation of this world as well. All the formation, duration, degradation, and empty kalpa has been expounded already. I am quite aware that people who are sitting here had received education from various schools, let it be in China or abroad. Especially those of you who received the education from abroad, I think those kinds of knowledge could be very helpful when it comes to the Dharma teaching as well, to the explaining of it. I noticed that in our post-class presentation, usually we have a few different groups, discussion groups. Some are in Chinese, in Japanese, in English, and yesterday I noticed that the majority of you are only having the group discussions in Chinese language, but not even the English language. But you belong to the English discussion group. Why don't you use the English language then? I am particularly mentioning this is because though that in the West there are lots of gurus giving empowerments and giving even Vajrayana teaching in the Western languages. However, to explain and to further give teachings on the theory of Buddhism is rather very rare. Therefore, we need to learn to give the Dharma teachings in English language and other languages. On one hand, it's very easy to study different kinds of content on the internet, but because of the special conditions we have right now, it's difficult to get other resources. But if we were to have an open mind and open heart, I'm sure you would be able to succeed in expanding your horizons and expanding your tools to give the Dharma teachings to the others. We should not be selfish, and we should definitely expand our aspiration, and we should try to generate the kind of aspiration to expound the teaching to the different sentient beings who speak different languages, to unfetter their different graspings. If you were to have such kind of aspiration, then in your life, if you can have this kind of life goal, I'm sure you will be able to succeed. As Mahayana Buddhist practitioners, we definitely have to have the resources, and we definitely have to develop our own capacity to do so. Otherwise, it would be making bricks without straw. Therefore, I am specifically mentioning this so that to encourage you to propagate the Dharma to the others, to give the teachings to the others, and develop your own capacity to do so. Do not get afraid of it. You need to expand your mind and expand your aspiration. Today, let us continue with the teaching on relying on a virtuous teacher, on a qualified guru. Do not, when it comes to relying on a teacher, you should not just simply rely on whomsoever stands in front of you. Otherwise, you could get into lots of trouble. Nowadays, I think it gets much better, but for a period of time, there used to be lots of charlatan teachers. Therefore, when it comes to learning Buddhism, when it comes to relying on teacher, we need to find someone who has wisdom, has compassion, who's qualified to give teachings. Just to simply think about nowadays, the teachers, even the kindergarten teachers, they need to be certified to teach. If you want to learn how to drive, then the driver schools, those teachers also need to have certifications. So when it comes to your spiritual path, you definitely need to know the qualifications of a Dharma teacher as well. The characteristics that we're talking about here is not the kind of characteristics that we discuss in Buddhism logic. Rather, it is the qualities and merits of the teacher, the endowments of the teacher. In our previous class, we have already covered the 5 categories of characters out of the 7 to distinguish the qualified teachers. Many people says that when it comes to relying teacher, it would be quite a pity if we were to rely on an unqualified teacher, and then not only it could lead us to the wrong path and waste our precious time as a human being. Therefore, we definitely need to find a good and qualified spiritual teacher. Whenever we are learning any kinds of technical skills or craftsmanship, ever since the ancient times, without a good teacher, without a good guide, it would be difficult for you to succeed in that trade. So when it comes to relying on the teacher, we definitely need to pay attention. Now we've already covered 5 out of the 7 types of categories. Now let's look at the 6th. Now let's look at the 6th category. The shloka says that the teacher guiding with compassion, with pure bodhicitta, constantly benefiting sentient beings, endowed with blessings and grand blessings to the others, view, practice, actions, and fruition, carry out the signs of attainment, permeating great power that dispels the disrupting obscurations, skillfully leading beings entering the path of liberation. The unequaled adornment of the world, one shall reverently take homage. There are all kinds of different teachers. There are the categories of teachers that's very good at giving blessings, very good at explaining the theories, and excellent at guiding sentient beings onto the path of liberation. On top of that, there are the charlatan teachers, the imposter teachers. There are various kinds of so-called teachers. And today, we're going to look at this teacher that has the sign of having great compassion and guiding sentient beings on the path of liberation. So this particular teacher, he has the pure bodhicitta and constantly benefiting others. This category of teacher does not have any selfishness or self-centeredness. He or she had already completed to the extent of developing the bodhicitta, the Mahayana bodhicitta, and whatever action he or she carries out are of benefiting to the others. In the words of my perfect teacher, it says that when it comes to the time to make observation of the guru, this guru must have bodhicitta, and that is the most basic and foremost requirement. The second one is that all of the blessings has already entered into this guru from his guru, and then he would be able to benefit the others by bestow the blessings as well. The term blessing, I think we can say that this is a particular Buddhism jargon. We would say that, oh, please grant me blessings. However, this particular term, though not used by the worldly beings, by the non-believers, but there is the similar feeling that can be felt. For example, a really well-known entrepreneur, scientist, or doctor, whomsoever has such a sense of great aspiration in their heart, then there is definitely the insubstantial energies, insubstantial power within that person. Whenever you look at a great person throughout history, the person may have lots of disciples, and people would think that some truly got what this person had taught and some don't. In fact, that is not true. There is a sense of blessing, the insubstantial power that's been passed down to everyone, especially when it comes to Buddhism. The blessings that's been passed down from the guru to the other person, if the guru is very skilled, and if the guru had already received the blessings from his guru, then he would be able to pass down that blessings. Ponzo Rinpoche, on one hand, he is so erudite and prolific in the Sutrayana and Mantrayana teachings, but on the other, he can bestow such great blessings to the others. You would be able to feel this energetic field or this effortless power that could transform your mind onto the path. This is called the blessings. So the third one is science of attainment. As a guru, you can't just parroting the beautiful Dharma words or simply recite fluently of all the sutras and shastras, because Devadatta, he could also memorize so many sutras and texts that even an elephant cannot carry that amount of texts. So nowadays, people can be very good at talking. They can use all kinds of flowery language, but do they really have that sign of attainment, of the actual attainment in their mind stream? We are not lacking of any talkers. People are very good at giving speech, but can you really practice what you preach? That is the true question. We really need the down-to-earth doers rather than the talkers. Not only within Buddhism, I'm talking about within the whole world. We really need people who can carry out those actions. Nowadays, whenever I look for people who can work on certain projects, I usually would look for the doers. I look for people who can actually carry out this kind of down-to-earth working ethics. My personal experience is that it's quite essential to make observation whether this person is only good at talking or would be able to practice whatever he or she preaches. In general, it is essential to see if a person could generate a sense of warmth in the view, practice, action, and fruition. And what warmth means is that if a person would be able to attain some kind of insights and experience of the view and have certain kinds of attainment throughout practice, this is quite essential. This is the third point. And then the fourth is that has great power that could dispel obscurations. If this guru has certain kinds of enlightenment and attainment, then the power of attainment would be able to dispel the evil forces. Without attainment, then it would be difficult for the teacher to tame those evil forces. Rather, it may even encourage those kinds of obstacles to occur. So whenever this person is embodied with so-called positive energy or certain kinds of attainment, then that could naturally dispel the obstructing forces. The next quality is to skillfully guide the sentient beings onto the path of liberation. Through whichever aspects, the guru must have certain kinds of skillful means. Let it be to manifest some supernatural or some miraculous powers so that people's wrong views can be eradicated, or being very skillful to help the others so that nobody would be hurted by the teacher. So those are the five characteristics or five qualities. The teacher who's fully endowed with all of the previously stated qualities can be called the adornment of the world. Even if one region, one country, and one place that has one teacher like that, then this teacher can be called the adornment of that region, of that area, of that country. I think I told this story before that there was a Khenpo in the county that's nearby, and he once stated in a joking way, saying that, so-and-so Lama once praised me, saying that I am the adornment of this county, and I've been too bashful to share it with with others. Actually, there's really nothing to be bashful about because Lama Chucha, indeed, wherever he would be, he could be considered as the ornament of that area. There are teachers, indeed, they are the ornament of this world. They dignify this world, such as Ponsok Rinpoche, Degu Khyentse Rinpoche, Dudrum Rinpoche. Whenever they are still in the world, at the time when they were still in this world, there are all kinds of praises, and there are also people who would create all kinds of negative slandering about them as well. But once those teachers parted from this world, people would feel that, oh, that teacher was definitely someone who had insight, who had inner realization, who had great blessings. Back in 1993, Ponsok Rinpoche went to United States and Canada, and he taught over there. I recently met someone from Colorado who told me that he met Ponsok Rinpoche. Now he's not that young anymore, but he told me that when he was little, he met Ponsok Rinpoche on his teaching trip to United States. He said that his mother led him there, and he remembered that Ponsok Rinpoche was having this burly built, very big and quite magnificent in the appearance, and he said he remembered that he was very splendid and radiating great power and dignity. He felt that he was very glad of meeting this guru, meeting this lama, and he felt that it was definitely the ornament of this world and ornament of his life as well. So over here, this unsurpassed ornament, sometimes we would say that the spiritual teacher, on one hand, has the ability to eradicate the evil forces and then the obstructing powers. Just as, according to the great Jeweled Heap Sutra, it says that diligently rely on a spiritual friend or spiritual teacher could raise all vicious forces. This is, of course, from the angle of the disciple. If the disciple would be able to rely on the spiritual teacher properly, then lots of obstacles and evil forces would be naturally eliminated. Therefore, we should rely on such a great teacher with great veneration. This is the sixth category. Now let's look at the seventh category, which is the last one out of the seven. This type of guru is indeed quite magnificent. The teachers that we're talking about over here are not the simple refuge vow teachers or the lay practitioner vow teachers or the Pratimoksha vow teachers. Rather, the teachers as mentioned over here are the ones with attainments, or the enlightened masters, which are very difficult to find nowadays. Indeed, many great masters of this world, let it be domestic or abroad, lots of those senior teachers, they indeed have the intrinsic attainment, they have those insights. Unfortunately, many of those great teachers have passed away in the recent years, let it be from the Chinese tradition, the Tibetan Buddhism tradition, or the Theravada tradition. Lots of the great masters has passed away. Now, the young generation of the masters, of the teachers, it seems that maybe because of the lack of age and experience, or maybe lack of the level of attainment, it seems that the younger generation are not as magnificent as the older generation or or that powerful or has that intrinsic power as the previous generation. I'm not talking about being famous or not, having the numbers of disciples or not. Of course, those could be a way of making such judgment, but on the other, I think we can definitely feel the level of blessings. If you were to be able to meet a type of teacher that has intrinsic insights and attainment, then meeting such a teacher would be indeed unforgettable for throughout your whole life, and it would be extremely helpful throughout your whole life. Let's look at this category of teacher, which is quite magnificent, I have to say. The true ultimate teacher, whomsoever makes connection with this teacher, would be able to practice the profound teaching, directly pointing out the Dharmakaya within, provide help so that the students would be able to attain the supreme enlightenment or to increase their attainment. This particular teacher, the teacher that points out the ultimate teachings, such as the highest teaching in Chan Buddhism, the clear mind, seeing the true nature, or according to the Pure Land school, it is without a single distraction, or according to the Vajrayana, it is pointing out the nature of mind. So this kind of teacher is the true guru. What is the characteristic? The first one is that whomsoever makes a connection with this type of teacher, with his immeasurable compassion as such a wonderful teacher, he would be able to guide the sentient beings and grant the sentient beings great benefits. This teacher would be giving different teachings to different sentient beings according to their different capacities. Whomsoever makes the auspicious connections to the teacher, then this teacher would guide them onto the path of Dharma, onto the path of Dharma and onto the profound path of Dharma. It is not just a simple teachings. It is not to say that, oh, as long as you tame your mood, then it will be good enough. As long as you're happy, you can just look at these flowers and then you should be okay. You can have this calm mind. You can just chant even one sound of, even one chanting of Amitabha, that would be great. Of course, this is helping the sentient beings to make connection. But over here, this teacher gives the most important teaching, especially if this teacher has certain level of attainment. In this way, he would definitely give the disciple the most profound Dharma teaching and the highest Dharma teaching. This is the first aspect. The second aspect is to point out the Dharmakaya, the treasure of the Dharma body that is within. It is to pointing out the true nature of the mind of the disciple. There are some of those kinds of pointing out instructions given in Chan Buddhism, same as in Vajrayana, but there are different levels of disciples. There are teachers who can give direct pointing out and have such pith instructions, but there are the disciples who can only receive the step-by-step, or their capacity is to receive the step-by-step guidance, and then the other ones, such as the sixth patriarch, who's rather more of a leaping through type of a student. Therefore, the teacher would be able to give the teachings according to the different capacity of the students. So whenever it comes to the direct pointing out of the teacher, it is quite essential that the teacher also have a certain level of enlightenment, a certain level of attainment. Otherwise, if you were to explain the profound Vajrayana from for example, the Pramana point of view, whenever you give the teachings of the Gyurhagarbha Tantra, rather than giving the teaching from a Vajrayana point of view, if you were to give it from the Buddhist logic point of view, then it doesn't work. So pointing out the Tathagata Garbha within requires the teacher has to already have understanding of Vajrayana as well as attainment within. Now that's the second. And then the third one is that the teacher would be able to help the disciples to come to attainment and to increase their insights. If a teacher cannot answer the questions about their practices or any of the questions about the afflictions, rather to just say that, why don't you go back and read more books? Why don't you go back and think more on it? This is definitely not helpful at all. Rather, the teacher should resolve the questions and problems of the students so that the disciple would be able to progress on the path and to have more attainment. In this way, the teacher himself would also be able to have certain kinds of progress. Just like Ponzo Rinpoche, he would have all kinds of dreams about his Lama at night, and in this way, that definitely shows the different attainments within the Lama. Now, the fourth one is how to attain the supreme ground of ultimate truth, skillfully turn into the profound path, reach in teachings and know the mind of others, crossing the oceans of samsara in this lifetime, captain the wish-fulfilling jewel, king of medicine, unsurpassed teacher like such should be relied on with great veneration. This is another quality of this teacher. This is the fourth one, which says that this teacher has already attained the supreme ground of ultimate truth, has already attained the supreme level of understanding. In this way, the student would definitely be able to recognize the nature of mind as well. The fifth one is skillfully turn into the path of the profound path. In Vajrayana, there are lots of skillful means. It is the profound path that has not been pointed out through the Sutrayana teachings, though Sutrayana is indeed very supreme as well. The Vajrachatika, the Diamond Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, the Vimalakirti Sutra, each of those sutras are supreme and really profound. But whenever we talk about the nature of mind in the Vajrayana, you would be able to find more of those profound pointing outs and more of the profound pithy instructions. Such skillful means can transform the worldly onto the path of enlightenment. Some may slander those are adharmic, those are not dharma. But if you were to look into the Chan Buddhism stories, you will be able to see some truly enlightened ones could be hunters and butchers and even go into prostitutes or the brothels as well. On the surface, it seems that they uphold such kind of inferior disposition, but those kinds of defiled things cannot contaminate their mind stream. So that's the fifth one. And sixth one is that the teacher has lots of Dharma teachings as well as knowing the minds of the others. Yesterday we talked about there are teachers who may appear to have lots of worldly provisions, but very poor in the spiritual wealth. That would be really sad. But this type of teacher that we're talking about today is that this teacher would be able to be a treasure of teachings. On top of that, knowing the mind stream of the others. The seventh one is that after relying on this teacher, one would be able to attain the supreme enlightenment within one lifetime. The teacher would be able to attain enlightenment in one lifetime, same as leading the students to cross the ocean of samsara. Now, a teacher like this, who's endowed with all of those qualities, can be called the captain, the wish-fulfilling jewel, or the king of medicine. Such kind of teacher surpasses all, and we should rely on this teacher with our greatest veneration, with our greatest joy and greatest faith. This is quite important. Even if this teacher doesn't have all of the six qualities, even if one quality, up to many qualities of them, then we should still rely on this teacher with great faith and great joy and great veneration. This is quite important. Those kinds of teachings had been taught in the Tantra of condensed the secret meanings and so on. Now we have already completed the 7 categories of characteristics of qualified gurus. Now, the next verse, of all the supreme qualities, the teacher who's endowed with all the qualities is like a night blooming Cyrus. Like a true Buddha, one who endowed with the 6 qualities can be relied on as well. As it is quite rare in the Dark Age, one should rely on such teacher with the greatest veneration. Previously, we talked about how the guru with 7 qualities would be extremely difficult to find, just like the night blooming Cyrus, because night Cyrus, the kind of flower, is very difficult to find during the time of the Buddha. It can only be found around the river without heated wax. Other than that, it's very difficult to find. Anyhow, when we talk about the kind of guru who's endowed with all the qualities, is indeed very difficult to find. But when I reflect up on Pengtso Rinpoche, I think he's endowed with all of them. So we have already encountered such a wonderful and perfect teacher who's just like a true Buddha, as it is stated in the shloka. Also, it says that in the shloka, the kind of a guru who's endowed with the 6 kinds of qualities can be a qualified teacher, and we should rely on that teacher as well. This 6, I'm not quite sure if this 6 refers to the 6 categories or the 6 qualities under, or the 6 qualities under each category. But I think if one were to be endowed with the 6 qualities within one particular category, can be a worthy teacher to rely on as well. As this is the degenerated age, this is a dark age, and it's very difficult to find a qualified teacher, so we should rely on such teachers who's endowed with those qualities. But of course, those kinds of teachers who's definitely very familiar with the right path and who can guide you onto the path of liberation can definitely be a teacher that is worthy to rely. And previously, I think in the words of my perfect teacher, it talks about all different kinds of qualities of being a teacher. And at the very end, it says that if one were to be, if one were to have the developed bodhicitta, even if the other qualities are not completely developed, then it is still considered as that this teacher can be qualified. According to Wish Fulfilling Treasury, it says that it is, as long as the teacher is proficient in the correct path, then that is the teacher that is worthy to be relied on. If the teacher doesn't know anything, then this teacher definitely would not be able to guide sentient beings. So when it comes to rely on the teacher, do not care too much about the fame or about the different kinds of advertisements. Rather, you need to find a teacher who's proficient in guiding the student onto the path of enlightenment and attain enlightenment. I remember that there's a story of Milarepa when he relied on Marpa Lotsawa. Marpa did not let him to study the 5 treatises or the Tantra. Rather, he taught Milarepa in a very skilled way to lead him to liberation. The other day, Composer from Lodro was scolding people in a meeting, and then he said that please do not scold others like what I am doing. I think it's very interesting to make the observation of what the teachers do. Anyhow, over here it says that we should rely on the teacher with our greatest faith if the teacher is qualified. According to the condensed verses of Prajna Paramita, it says always rely on the wise teacher, as wisdom and merit comes from them. So this is the reason. Now we're going to look at the extensive and the brief explanation of why we should rely on them. First of all, let's talk about what it means by relying on the teacher. Relying on the teacher doesn't mean that you need to rely physically on the teacher, to never part from the teacher. It doesn't mean that. It is not to hold on to the mind of the teacher. Rather, it is to say that you need to follow the teaching that the teacher gives. You need to carry out the actions according to the teaching that the teacher gives. This is what it means by rely. In a worldly sense, a student needs to follow the teacher's guidance so that the student would be able to understand and gain the knowledge. Similarly, the disciple needs to rely on the teacher so that the wisdom can further increase. This is the brief explanation. And then let's look at the 6 aspects in extensive explanation. The first one is that relying on the teacher is the permanent and the long-term great goal. Because by relying on the teacher is not temporary. We can rely on the worldly teacher or even our parents for a short period of time. They would be benefiting us for a short period of time. But when relying on a teacher, then it is definitely a much long-term relations and connections. It is for this lifetime and future lifetimes. When we rely on the worldly teachers and even our parents, the kind of knowledge that they would teach us is, for example, how to build characters and how to set your own family and your career and how to plan for your life and all of those very basic worldly rules. And your worldly teacher and parents, as well as even your manager or your boss, could do all of that. But what a teacher, the guru, a spiritual teacher could do is to help us to actually tread onto the path of liberation, to see the nature of your own mind and generate bodhicitta. This, on top of that, to generate the mind to benefit self and others. Those are really crucial things that we need to do. Other than the spiritual teacher, there is really no way to rely on your parents or the worldly teacher to ask them to help you on the path of liberation. Your parents, at most, they'll be able to, for example, help you out with a house, with a car, or give you some of the money that they've saved. But how could your parents teach you to recognize the nature of your mind, or to ask you to generate bodhicitta and liberate sentient beings? This cannot be done by the parents, by the kings, or by your friends and family members. None of them would be able to do so. That is why we really need a spiritual teacher. That is a characteristic of the spiritual teacher. So whenever people would ask you why to rely on a spiritual teacher, then you need to tell them it is because my objective is not temporary, it's not small, rather it is a very long-term and grand objective that I need to achieve. It is only by relying on the teacher I can do that. According to Avatamsaka Sutra, it says that all the Dharma within the 10 directions can be entered through serving a qualified spiritual friend or spiritual teacher. You have to serve the spiritual teacher so that the Dharma can be entered in, so that you can enter into the gate of the Dharma. Other people cannot help you out with that. That is why there are people who has to go to those Buddhist institutes and go to certain monasteries and serve and seek for the Dharma teachings from the Guru. Of course, if you can do that, you have to already accumulated lots of merits and developed that kind of wisdom eye and your virtuous roots. I remembered back when I was at Mount Wutai, I asked Khenpo Deba to write down a teaching for me, and I would keep that for a long period of time. So in his teaching that he gifted me, he said that if a person were to advise you to leave Ponzo Rinpoche, the wish-fulfilling Zhu, even if it were your parents who give you this advice, you should not listen to it. Because at that time, I only relied on Ponzo Rinpoche for 2 years, and that was the advice Khenpo Deba gave me to advise me to cherish the connection to the spiritual teacher. So the spiritual teacher who's very much experienced and who's very skilled could give you much more of a wisdom and the grand love to you than that of your parents, because your parents' love are rather very short-timed and could be very limited. It is very much limited to this lifetime and to these worldly things. Other than that, the parents would not be able to provide you. So that is why we need to rely on the spiritual teacher. The second reason talks about relying on a teacher could help us to know what to accept and what to reject. If people were to ask you, why do you need to rely on a spiritual teacher? These are the answers that you can explain to the other people. Expounding on the profound essential points of what to reject and what to accept, eradicate the suffering and illness, as well as eliminating the fogs of ignorance, opening your wisdom eye and shows you the path of liberation. It is only the teacher who could do that, therefore I should always rely on the teacher. So here's the reason on why we should rely on the spiritual teacher. In fact, the spiritual teacher would give you the teachings on what to accept and what to reject, as well as the causes and fruitions. Such kind of profound teachings cannot be given by the kind fathers and mothers, because the parents sometimes would tell you the exact different teachings than the law of karma. For example, how to eliminate your enemies, how to kill the other sentient beings, how to engage in warfare and create lots of negative deeds. But the teacher would give you the most essential teachings on what to accept and what to reject, so that it could lead you to forever eradicate suffering and forever attain the peace and happiness. This is the teaching that the teacher would be able to do. Also, the teacher would be able to teach us how to eradicate the ignorance and the kind of fog of confusion, as well as leading us on the path of liberation, help us to open our wisdom and how to help us to benefit the sentient beings, how to help us to find out ways to benefit people in this lifetime as well as the other lifetimes. But the worldly parents and colleagues, teachers, kings, and your managers cannot do that at all. It is said in a sutra that though that we have eyes, but there is no light, therefore we cannot see any forms. Did you remember that? I have already repeated this twice. My teacher in the past used to tell us that I will read it once, maybe read it twice, and then for the last one, I will read it again for the really foolish ones. Over here it says that the practitioners like so, though have wisdom and capacity, without the spiritual friend, one would not be able to see the Dharma. It is stated in the sutra. Though we have lots of knowledge that's accumulated from this world, but without the spiritual friend, without spiritual teacher, we would not be able to understand so many teachings on what to accept and what to reject. Lots of the questions cannot be answered, therefore we need the guidance from the spiritual friend. According to the Jakarta Sutra, it says that one should affiliate oneself with a spiritual teacher in such a way whatever you wish for will be accomplished. This is the teaching to the ones with the most wisdom. So whenever we truly rely on a great spiritual teacher, whatever we wish for will definitely be accomplished. I think this is my experience as well. After relying on Phuntsok Rinpoche for 5-6 years, or I'm sure there are lots of you who stayed here for 20 or 30 years, then you're probably quite aware of how much development and how much knowledge that you've gained throughout the years. I'm sure many of you want to stay here for so-and-so years and want to stay here for a long period of time, but please don't think in such a way, because you have responsibilities to fulfill. If you remember the story of Milarepa's mother told him that now you're going to study black magic. Do not think of it as if you're studying it just like all the other students who were from those rich families, wealthy families. You know what had happened to our home, therefore you have to study with great diligence so that you can fulfill your responsibilities after. I think for those of you who are here, you also need to develop this sense of diligence and a sense of urgency when you're studying the Dharma. If you just came here with a sense of curiosity, and then now that you've already entered into the gate of Dharma, and someone else had already led you onto the path of liberation, now you have the responsibility to also do the same for the others. You should not stay here just so that you can attain arhathood. Many of you probably had lots of ghee, lots of fresh butter. How many kilos of butter you have now? Why do you have so many kilos of ghee? That's good, but don't eat too much of it, otherwise it's easy to... What's that? The fatty liver. Just don't eat too much of it. Do not stay here because you want to stay for the ghee. Have you ever thought about going back to your hometown and propagate the Dharma? You made the aspiration to die over here. All right. Why do you make such aspiration to die over here? No? What are you thinking of? The male practitioner replied, "Whatever my teacher tells me to do, I will do that."
好，接下来那个讲看为这个圣天，就是看为殊胜的天，也是上
Now the next verse talks about how the teacher is the most supreme field of merit. Perfect the two accumulations on the path of liberation, the root of which is the supreme teacher, that surpassed all of the humans and the celestial beings. Such is the most supreme merit field. These kinds of teachers should be venerated and be relied on. While practicing bodhicitta, we definitely need to accumulate the two accumulations, which is the accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom. So during those kinds of practices, we need to regard the teacher as the object. This is the best way of accumulation of the two accumulations. If we can follow the teachings according to the teacher's teachings and then often supplicate the teacher and to visualize the teacher in such a way it will be easy to perfect the two accumulations. The teacher that is the most supreme among the humans in the human realm and the ones in the celestial realm, there is no one else that could surpass that of the teacher. So that is why we would call the teacher being the best field of merit. For that reason, we need to rely on the spiritual teacher with our greatest veneration, according to the Tantra of condensed meaning, the Tantra of the ocean of wisdom, and many of the Tantras included such teachings. Also, according to Avatamsaka Sutra, which expounded lots of the examples, hopefully, later you would have more time to look into those explanations, especially the commentary, because I am simply going through the verses and I didn't want to spend too much time on the verses. If I were to quote all of those quotations from Tantras and Sutras, it's going to take a much longer period of time, but I didn't really want to do that, because I don't want to drag on for a long period of time. Since we don't know what's going to happen in our life later on, so it would be the best to perfectly finish one particular sutra and shastras. Therefore, I really hope that each and every one of you could read into the commentary. Do not just brush through it, rather look at the quotations that's quoted by Longchenpa, especially at the time of Longchenpa talking about how to rely on a spiritual teacher. Some of the verses can be a little bit difficult to understand, but if you were to spend a lot of time and attentiveness, you would definitely be able to understand it. During the evening presentation time and the discussion group time, I really see that you are very open-hearted and making those discussions and those questions and answers. Those are really wonderful, because by having those questions and answers, by having those discussions, it definitely would help you to develop faith in the teachings of Buddhism. And the Buddhism teachings is open to the questions, and it would be able to endure all of your questions. It's not going to fall apart. It is only that sometimes our wisdom couldn't follow the teachings of Buddhism. So you don't need to worry about questioning the teachings over here. When it comes to the wish-fulfilling treasury, each of those quotations quoted by Longchenpa are for a reason. According to Iko Agama Sutra, the Buddha asked Venerable Ananda, saying that, is our liberation relying on the spiritual teacher? Is our liberation, is half of the attainment relying on the spiritual teacher? And then Ananda said that yes, half of it should be relied on the spiritual teacher. And then the Buddha said, no, you're wrong, because the liberation is completely relying on a spiritual teacher. According to the great commentary of the aspiration to be reborn in Sukhavati, I believe there's also the same quotation, the same story. The teacher is really the key, so we need to rely on the teacher with great veneration, and that is the best dependent arising. According to Avatamsaka, there are all kinds of examples. It talks about the 4 types of Dharma, 5 types of Dharma, quite a few of them. It also talks about how if we were to even remember the teacher, to visualize the teacher, to walk towards the direction where the teacher resides, to circumambulate the teacher, to praise the teacher, and to venerate and supplicate the teacher from our mind, such kind of merit is unfathomable. There are lots of merits about relying on the teacher. I'm going to give too much of the quotations on that, but for people with wisdom, when it comes to a time to simply just practice Guru Yoga, one would be able to attain realization, especially when it comes to the Tibetan Buddhism. it places great emphasis and importance to Guru Yoga, and that is the reason behind it. That is why Tibetan Buddhism is so unique. Not only we quote from those tantras, we also quote a lot of teachings from the sutras. You can read into Avatamsaka Sutra. You can look at those examples and those metaphors that are used to describe those spiritual teachers. They are teachers of worldly traits, and we can definitely study from those teachers, and we can definitely study those worldly knowledge. But by relying on those worldly traits, can we attain liberation? We cannot do that. So in this lifetime, those kinds of worldly traits can provide you some skillful means so that you can have food and meal and happiness, temporary happiness, but that's it. But when you think of spiritual teacher and think of such long-term happiness, that is why the spiritual teacher is so much more important. Now let's look at the last one for today. The lower realms obstacles and fears. To be saved from such, protected by the supreme refuge place, the Buddha also relied on teachers. In order to part from the wrong advice, one should always rely on a spiritual teacher. We have been wandering in the endless samsara. Indeed, the teacher is quite crucial to save us from the suffering ocean of samsara. We have all kinds of suffering, all kinds of fear and obstacles. If one were to be saved in the three lower realms, there's no one else could do so to save you from the three lower realms than the spiritual teacher. Whenever we suffer from the worldly terror, such as in battlefield or other kinds of worldly terrors, then your friends, family, and maybe your mentor would be able to help you out of it. However, whenever we are suffering from the samsara, there is no one else other than the teacher whom can guide you the way out. We ourselves definitely don't have the ability to help out ourselves and attain liberation. So we need to rely on the spiritual teacher. Other than the spiritual teacher, our parents, even our king or the policeman cannot help us out from the samsara. Maybe other kinds of terrors, worldly terrors such as a thief and a robber, sometimes they can help out, but it is definitely the spiritual teacher who can help us out ultimately. The spiritual teacher would definitely be able to do that. Look at Milarepa, whom had already done such heinous actions through the black magic. After he went to Rontonaga to rely on him and said that he wanted to attain liberation so that he can avoid the suffering of samsara. And then Rontonaga said that, well, I have the supreme teaching. If you can practice during the day, you attain liberation during the day. If you practice at night, you attain liberation at night. For people who have diligence and with great connection, sometimes even without practicing much, would be able to attain liberation. For that reason, Milarepa got really lazy, and after a period of time, Rontonaga said that maybe you indeed had too much of the negative karma. I really can't help you out. So why don't you go to this teacher whose name is Marpa Lotsawa? If you go there, you might be able to receive the teachings that you need. At the time of hearing the name of Marpa Lotsawa, Milarepa's mind just completely transformed, and his hair stood up at his neck and started to have tears pouring out of his eyes. And then he went to rely on Milarepa. He relied on the Marpa Lotsawa. And then he attained the fruition of Vidyadhara and was alleviated from the suffering of samsara. After created so much negative deeds, he relied on the teacher with great enlightenment and attained realization within this one lifetime. There is really no one else who can help out in those situations other than a teacher. Previously, we talked about that of course, the teacher has to have attainment as well. At least the requirement is to have a bodhicitta. To avoid relying on an imposter teacher or a charlatan, then you need to first make the observation of the teacher and then rely on the teacher, and then you can receive the profound teachings and profound blessings and actions from the teacher. If you were to rely already on an imposter or on someone who has not attained realization, there are, of course, different possibilities. It could be your own mind because you only see the faults of a teacher. As sometimes people, whenever they have a good mood, whenever they have right mindfulness, then they would see the good qualities of teacher, and sometimes when you're not, then you started to talk about the faults of the others. And sometimes it could be true that the teacher is indeed a mundane person. Even in such a way, you should not slander the teacher, because at least you had already received the Dharma teaching in front of that teacher, then you should understand that there is the boundary. We need to be very clear about the boundary. You shouldn't at first praise the teacher and then later started to slander the teacher. It is not the worldly connections where if you were to have a good relationship with someone else, then you can praise the other person as much as you want, and then started to slander the others when the relationship goes downhill. It is not the proper way of relating to the teacher. The rules of Buddhism would be completely different when it comes to relying on the teacher. So you have to know that there are consequences if you were to do that. It is just like to say that if you were to spit upwards right into the space, the spit would fall right onto your face. It is not going to be harmful to the space. So we have to be very careful about that. According to the Tantra of Condensed Meanings, it says that one should know that compared to the Buddhas of 1,000 kalpas, the teacher is a more severe or more immediate object. Since the teacher is more of an immediate object for the karma, therefore all of your slanders and your all kinds of vicious words would create more of a negative karma than slandering the thousands of Buddhas. For someone with wisdom, we need to learn how to protect ourselves. We should not slander. We should not use vicious words towards the teacher. This is not to protect the teacher. The teacher is really important. But you're not slandering the teacher is not because you want to protect the teacher. Rather, if you were to slander the teacher, it means that you're rather very foolish. If you don't believe in Buddhism, then of course you have your reasons. But if you were to say that my belief is in Buddhism, on the other hand, you started to slander the teachers who had bestowed you the Dharma teachings, that really shows you are quite foolish. So for someone who slanders or let it be in front of the teacher or behind the teacher's back, that kind of so-called Buddhist is definitely very foolish or has some mental problems. Because even if you were to say it from a worldly point of view, there are people who would get close and then tomorrow get far away and don't want to talk to each other anymore. Things would happen because it's impermanent. But from the Buddhist point of view, either you do not agree with the perspectives of Buddhism, the teachings of Buddhism, Or you agree with the Buddhism, then you should practice exactly what is said in the Sutra and Tantras. If you don't do so, and then claim that you believe in Buddhism, how foolish is that? It's very contradictory. I think nowadays the Buddhists are getting much better than they used to be. Maybe in the past you didn't study it and didn't understand it. I think parts of the teachings that's included in Words of My Perfect Teacher and Resting Mind, as well as the praises of qualities, where it talks quite a bit about the pith instructions on relying on the teacher. I think people with wisdom should be very careful when it comes to relating to the teacher. Whenever there's aggression or afflictions, then you need to stop yourself, especially in front of the teacher. You need to be able to tame your own afflictions. If you were to start to use vicious words and create difficulties with the relationship to the teacher, then you should definitely confess right away, and definitely not to prolong that process overnight. For those of you, after we study this part, I really hope that you can have certain kinds of changes in your behavior. At least when it comes to me, that's what I am doing. According to Venerable Atisha, he said that I had relied to thousands of gurus. Some of them have certain kinds of qualities that's better than me, but some kinds of qualities that's not as. For example, if I were to study Abhidharma, then I could rely on this teacher to study Abhidharma, but maybe this person's Tantra studies is probably not as good as me. I think we can understand the teaching from Atisha from this angle. When you rely on a teacher, it is because you're progressing on the path, you're making developments. So whomsoever you relied on, even if it's someone that you've received the Dharma more than 4 stanzas, then you should revere that teacher, because no one else forced you to rely on a teacher. You did that by yourself. This is the way of relying on the teacher. So we'll stop here today.